When it all goes black, dark, when it all goes back to the way it was, before the first breath, before the first sound, before the first word, there will be a new life, a new sound, a new word. And when that new word scours through the rubble, when the search team goes through my nest, when they examine my wings, they will see a rare prehistoric avian species, unfound, unseen, a new thing. A Coltrane mixed with a Sun Ra, sprinkled with a Nipsey. This is black history. What will they find? What will they find? They will find fines, unpaid parking tickets, hip-hop vinyls from the 90s, Theravada Buddhist texts, a couple of tennis balls I used to play fetch, mason jars of quinoas. I tried to be at my best. When they search through the rubble and sweep off the dust, they will find my journals. That was my only form of trust. They will read in those lines how I lost my mind and how I lost my faith in humankind and how I hid my anger in meter of rhymes. They will see how faith in man was restored by nature. It was Oregon, my holy, wondrous savior. They'll see a man at war with his own God, pointing back that lightning rod, fire rising from the sheet, the bones of my old Nike cleats, sunny days in Sausalito, mango fruits in Cartagena, family feuds and broken bands, a cultured, curious, complicated man. They will see a complicated man, an angry man, a sad man, a nice man, a gentle man. You know what? They might just see glimpses of a man and more of a boy trying to figure out how to become a man. And then how that boy filled page after page after page with rage after rage after rage, illegible efforts in the dark of the night, stoned endeavors as I search for light, blinded but somehow my hand still writes, pages ripped out from the spine on purpose, stains of my tears dried on the surface, my entire chaotic existence. I pray that they aren't surprised by the blood lingering on their fingers. I pray when they search through the rubble that they're not afraid of the doors that open the gates of their heart. I pray they don't think. I pray they don't blink. I pray they just feel. There may be, I don't know, something useful. That poem is called Scour Through the Rubble.
Welcome back to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast, the place where poetry meets conversation. I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and before we get into today's topic, make sure you hit that plus sign so you don't miss an episode. Also, please subscribe to my blog, thebrownssugarcafe.blog, and if you find any value in this episode or any other episodes, make sure you leave a heartfelt review. So with that being said, let's get to it.
When it all goes black, dark, when it all goes back to the way it was, before the first breath, before the first sound, before the first word, there will be a new life, a new sound, a new word. And when that new word scours through the rubble, when the search team goes through my nest, when they examine my wings, they will see a rare prehistoric avian species, unfound, unseen, a new thing. A Coltrane mixed with a Sun Ra, sprinkled with a Nipsey. This is black history. What will they find? What will they find? They will find fines, unpaid parking tickets, hip-hop vinyls from the 90s, Theravada Buddhist texts, a couple of tennis balls I used to play fetch, mason jars of quinoas. I tried to be at my best. When they search through the rubble and sweep off the dust, they will find my journals. That was my only form of trust. They will read in those lines how I lost my mind and how I lost my faith in humankind and how I hid my anger in meter of rhymes. They would see how faith in man was restored by nature. It was Oregon, my holy, wondrous savior. They'll see a man at war with his own God, pointing back that lightning rod, fire rising from the sheet, the bones of my old Nike cleats, sunny days in Sausalito, mango fruits in Cartagena, family feuds and broken bands, a cultured, curious, complicated man. They will see a complicated man, an angry man, a sad man, a nice man, a gentle man. You know what? They might just see glimpses of a man and more of a boy trying to figure out how to become a man. And then how that boy filled page after page after page with rage after rage after rage, illegible efforts in the dark of the night, stoned endeavors as I search for light, blinded but somehow my hand still writes, pages ripped out from the spine on purpose, stains of my tears dried on the surface, my entire chaotic existence. I pray that they aren't surprised by the blood lingering on their fingers. I pray when they search through the rubble that they're not afraid of the doors that open the gates of their heart. I pray they don't think. I pray they don't blink. I pray they just feel. There may be, I don't know, something useful. That poem is called Scour Through the Rubble.
Man, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Marcus Lattimore, and I'm formerly known as an athlete from the great state of South Carolina, a Gamecock, a San Francisco 49er. But I had to pivot in life after football was over with. And when I was going through that pivot, I picked up a pen to try to rewrite my destiny because my life had been defined by sport, that sport of football, and it consumed me. And I'm thankful for that journey. But now I write poetry and I write short stories and I write fables, I write essays, I do whatever I can with whatever comes out. I don't know in what form it's going to come out sometimes, but that is Marcus Lattimore, a athlete turned writer, trying to find my way and be comfortable in this existence. And how I do that is through the pen, and that's who I am.
First of all, thank you for taking the time to join the show and have a conversation with me. That opening piece, wow. What was the inspiration behind that?
Wow. Yeah. You know, I read a lot about different religions and how they see the afterlife. I grew up Christian, so that is my base layer of knowledge. But as I started to expand my mind a little bit further, I just wanted to know how other parts of the world think. And that leads you to picking up the Quran, which the Muslims read, and um, the Bhagavad Gita, which is what Hindus read, and one of the another books that I picked up was the Tibetan book of Living and Dying, and Tibetan. It's based on the Tibetan Buddhist religion, and they see the afterlife in a very fascinating way, just for somebody who's curious
Yeah.
and interested. I mean, it was just so cool to see how because they believe in reincarnation. And, just that whole concept to even think about for somebody who's just curious about different things was really cool. So it was inspired after reading that book, and they have this intermediate phase after death that they believe called the Bardo state. And the Bardo state is where they, depending on how you lived your life, that determines what next life you go to. So I was thinking about how I'm living my life right now, and it I just want people to know that it wasn't always perfect. It wasn't
Yeah.
always a beautiful thing, but at least you know when somebody does um, find my journals after I'm long and gone, after we're long and gone, hopefully that there's something in there that they can use to help them through the struggles and adversity that they face in life.
Yeah, that was a very powerful, powerful piece. You said that you started writing. You picked up a pen after football ended for you.
Yes.
Were you always a writer? Was it something you did earlier in life and then just picked it back up, or was it literally like just after that you started?
You know what, Terrence? I was always interested in culture and geography, not necessarily poetry. Always been a music fan, but
Oh yeah,
I remember around fourth grade, my mom bought me a book, and it was it was a book about America, and it was the states and every capital of the state and every bird, every state tree, and I memorized that book in like, I mean, maybe 7 days. So I always had this fascination about different places and the world and America. But not necessarily poetry. Football kind of consumed my life after fourth grade. I mean, where I
yeah,
grew up, it was just if you weren't playing football, they looked at you like you were crazy. If you were a male, black male
yeah.
in my town and you weren't playing football, it's like what are you doing? Why like
Right.
and then
Yeah.
all my friends were playing ball too, so I'm missing out on time I'm spending with them. So I kind of like stuffed all of my interests. I think I would have eventually found poetry. I think so, but I
Yeah.
stuffed it all.
Yeah, yeah. I could understand, man. I have interesting conversations about that just in general about things we did growing up, especially like sports. Like that just really consumed like what we were doing. And that was back when, kids was playing outside. Like I
Yes,
played basketball and I was talking about this the other day. It could be like 105 degrees outside, and we're outside in the middle of the day on the blacktop playing basketball.
it didn't matter. It
No.
it did not matter what the weather was. Hell, it could be raining. Look, the rain made it better. We take our
Yeah.
shoes off. And that's what I think. That's what kids are missing nowadays.
Yeah.
That the ability to just have free fun. So I'm not complaining about my upbringing. I think you know it keeps it kept that habit of staying active in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but it did. Football almost became a job once I got to high school, because
Mm,
we were just a prominent high school, and I mean it
yeah.
was year-round training. So
Wow. Yeah. You mentioned picking up the pen after football.
mhm.
Um, was it anything in particular that happened?
Yeah.
For those who are not familiar with your story, was there anything in particular that happened that, where you said you just had to pick up a pen?
Yes. So I retired from the NFL in 2014, and that's when I came back to South Carolina to complete my degree in public health because I left early as a junior. I completed my degree in 2016, and I started coaching
Oh
and
yeah.
it was a nice transition for me. It was very comfortable, and I enjoyed coaching. I enjoy imparting the wisdom that I have on the game to young folks. But there was something just inside of me that was just nagging. Like, is this really what you, although it is rewarding, coaching is rewarding, it's a beautiful art form. Is this what you really want to do with your life? It was just something that kept nagging at me that's
Mm,
saying that. And, I ignored that voice. I ignored that voice for a very long time. And, it kind of led me into a depression almost.
mm,
Like, I love the game. I I enjoy what I'm doing, but it's not fulfilling my soul. There was something inside of me that said, and I'd had that experience on the West Coast, and being out west, I was just able to see new sights and new cultures and be around
yeah.
new things, and I so that seed was already there of in, curiosity of like, what else could I do with my life? Um, and it got to a point where I couldn't. It. I was being in 2019. I was being inducted into the University of South Carolina Athletics Hall of Fame, and it was a momentous moment.
Yeah.
Like, I was proud of that accomplishment, but there was something that just told me, like, is this it? Like, is this
Mm,
what I've been doing it for? Like, just for a a reward? Like, I really didn't feel as proud as I could because I knew I wasn't living my full potential.
yeah.
Um, and in that moment, like, it was supposed to be a momentous moment, but it was really like a low moment for me. But also at the same time, it illuminated something. It was like, you can't ignore this small voice anymore. Just telling you, like you can stay in South Carolina and you can be comfortable for the rest of your life, or you can expand your mind, get uncomfortable, and grow. Like, because I, to be honest, I just wasn't growing in that familiar environment, like where everybody knew who I was, and I was expected to be number 21 everywhere I went, and that kind of identity kind of bogged down on me. So it was like, in that moment, it's time to go. And I just, after that, that's when I really started to pick up the pen.
Yeah, man, you know, a lot of times when we look at people who we admire, whether they're athletes, stars, or whatever, and they excel at the game, um, you definitely excelled with your time at USC. Um, it was unlike anything that I've ever seen before. And, us from the outside looking in, we're thinking like, man, he's got it made. He's doing something he love. But
Right,
then to hear, and I've heard this from a lot of people to hear like there's something else that I want to be doing. You may not know what it is just yet, but you just know that that's not it for you.
right.
And I applaud you for just taking a chance and going. Like we
Mm,
get comfortable, being in South Carolina. I mean, because you love your home state. This is where we're from.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
but it's like what else is out there? And I remember the first time I went to California, it was mind opening for me. It was just like, wow, it's so many different things and so many different people. And it's like the culture is just so laid back and cool. It's a different
Yes,
vibe from South Carolina.
yes.
So what took you to Oregon? And
Yeah.
what differences do you see from living in South Carolina to living in Oregon?
Wow. It's a great question. Um, what took me to Oregon? Because of the gift of football, I was able to travel a lot.
Ah,
So the
yeah.
first time I got on a plane was at 16 years old, and we actually went to Portland, Oregon. And this is where the Nike headquarters is, the world Nike headquarters. And we were competing in a 7-on-7 tournament against other high schools across America. And I just, I know that was a seed
Mm,
because I
yeah.
remember getting off the plane and just seeing how green this place was. And I mean, it's just evergreen trees that cover the land. And I mean, it's because of the rain, and it's just really a beautiful place to live. But you know, ideally, it would have. The Bay Area is what my wife and I, you know, that's what we wanted to be at when we decided after in 2019, early 2020, that it was time to make a move. But I mean, the Bay Area is just way too expensive.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I mean, you got to be a millionaire to be comfortable there.
Right.
And we ain't millionaires, so we looked at Oregon, and we had been there previously just to visit. It's a quiet town, big quiet town. A lot of art, a
Mm.
lot of creatives. People here are, I mean, they just take chances and they put on theater shows, and
Mhm.
they do their own thing here.
Yeah.
It's very it's a very introspective city. Um, it rains a lot, so you have to really get used to that. And but to the south, you have uh the mountains. To the west, you have the beach. To the north is more mountains. To the east is a desert. Like, you got all of these different landscapes, and Portland's like right in the middle of it, and it's a little bit cheaper than California.
Yeah.
So it ended up being like a nice incubator, particularly because my wife, she's into creative outlets too. I mean, she's a photographer.
Oh
She does
yeah, yeah.
yoga. So I mean, that's huge here. Nature photography is absolutely huge here. It's an active city. And for me personally, I mean, uh, uh, it's a lot of writers here. I mean, a ton of writers. And I mean, it's a spoken word poetry open mic going on almost every night.
Wow,
And
okay.
I kind of had a little bit of knowledge of that before I came, and it's just been a place where you can step out on faith and just try new things. And the differences. I mean, particularly, there's a lot of differences, politically and religiously, but
Yeah.
I think the main thing is really the landscape. The landscape is just really different. Pros and cons to both. I love a South Carolina sunset. I love the beach in Kiowa Island and Charleston. So I mean, I like different things about both places that I've lived, Carolina and Oregon. But Oregon, I mean, it's just been a real nice place for me to grow and explore different landscapes and different ideas.
I've been checking out your like I said in the pre-show that I've been checking out your journey as a poet, and you share some of the beautiful landscape in Oregon. And matter of fact, I think you just recently posted a poem about Oregon and you being there, and the backdrop, man, I was just like, wow, this is
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I mean, it's Terrence. I mean, it's like that. There's this stretch of highway called 84 East, and it. I mean, it runs from Portland all the way to the all the way to Idaho. So I mean, it's like hours upon hours of the Columbia River on the left, and to your right, it's just waterfalls the entire time. And you can take off. You can get off into an embankment, and there's a hike, and I mean, there's the most gorgeous waterfall, mountains, animals. I mean, you see eagles just like they're pigeons. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable how beautiful some of this land, and I mean, it's scarcely populated as well, so it hasn't been overtaken by
Yeah,
industry. So I
yeah,
mean, it's cool.
yeah. I'm from the low country, and when I was growing up, man, they had a lot more places where you can just enjoy nature.
Mm.
And now it's just so built up down there, and places are looking different. Like small towns like Somerville, for example. Somerville was very intimate. And
Yeah.
now it's just so much going on down there. You can't even recognize it. So it's always cool to find places that still have that I can't remember the word for it now, but it's like untouched.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
nature is still able to be nature.
Just wild and free, and I mean, and the thing about it is like there's not a lot of like there's some places here that are so wild and free that you could get lost and never be found again.
Wow.
Like I mean,
Yeah.
it's places you can't even live there. You can only drive. You can't stay the night. I mean, it's just um, and I think it has a lot to do with the history here. The governor in the '70s was an environmentalist from
Ah,
Oregon,
yeah.
and he put together a lot of policies that made sure that this land would not would stay untouched and stay pristine. And I mean, it's one of those the last places. Like you think of Alaska and you think of Wyoming, like Oregon, like the western big sky, Montana, like
Yeah.
it's in that category of like places you just um there's not a lot of industry that has been able to overtake it. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's you just made me think about like that's part of the problem with South Carolina. It's a lot of people that aren't from here coming here and making all these big developments, but we could do a whole episode on that. But
Oh my goodness. Like I mean, look, it's all about the economy, and
yeah,
I get it.
yeah,
We live in a capitalist country that prides ourselves on making money, but also at the expense of who? Like at the expense of our national parks. Like I mean,
yeah.
I just I don't agree with that.
Me either, man.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there are a lot of writers and poets. There's always poetry slams and open mics. Have you, I guess, let me see, I can ask this. Getting there and finding community,
Mm.
right? Do you now see that you needed to be in Oregon to find that community, or do you think you would have ever found that here in South Carolina?
Mm. Man, that's good. I needed to extricate myself from the familiar
Yeah.
because of two things. One, I, I I wouldn't have had to work for it. I wouldn't
Ooh.
have had to go through the frustration, the early frustrations of why am I even doing this? What am I doing? Like doubting myself. Like, can I do this? I think we all have to go through that process of like just building that belief in yourself, that inner belief. I wouldn't have had to go through that in South Carolina because everybody would have applauded just because of who I am.
Yeah.
And another reason is it it, it was just yeah. I mean I think that's the main thing. Like I wanted and I needed to be uncomfortable. I was just so used in sports. You're just so used to pushing yourself and overcoming and losing and falling and failing and like this ain't I mean it took me almost 2 years before I wrote something that I felt like okay um I actually enjoy what I just wrote because I had
Yeah.
to go through that growth period, like that early growth period. I needed that, Terrence. And Portland. is very open to new ideas. And me being from the South, it brings I grew up listening to Southern preachers, who are essentially spoken word poets, and
Yeah.
Southern coaches,
Yeah.
who are just some of the best motivators that you gonna find in America. Like,
Yep.
uh, you go to any high school in South Carolina, you gonna hear a coach, talking his talk.
Yes.
So that's in me, and I think I carry that with me whenever I write. It's like it's just inherently in me, like to maybe shape things almost in a way of like motivation slash sermon. And I bring that to the stage. I bring that Carolina flair that we have. Like I bring that, and it's different. And people like different here.
That was so my next question is, how did you go from writing to actually getting on the stage doing slam poetry and entering
Mm,
competitions? Where did that confidence come from?
yeah, yeah. I tell you what, it came from sports. I mean, like just this when I really reflect on it, I enjoy slightly enjoy the anxiety and nervousness and the idea of preparing to to go into a competition or to be in front of people. Like it's something about performance that has just stuck with me ever since I left the game of football. And I think when I was in that transitory phase of like post retirement and what's next, like coaching and I'm the director of player development at the university. I was missing that element of performance.
Mm,
I mean, it's just something that fulfills me and always has, since I've been 9 years old. Um, I've been performing in front of people. Yeah, granted, I had a helmet on, and I was a part of a team. But I mean, essentially, I'm the parallels are there. Like,
yeah.
you have to do your reps. You have to memorize. In practice, you have to go through your steps. You have to catch the ball 10, 15, 20 times. Um, just that whole idea of preparation, Terrence. I think I needed that in my life. Like I'm just such a structural being, and I enjoy. I don't know. I enjoy competition. I enjoy the idea of competition, and being a good sportsman. Not doing it to embarrass somebody, just
Right.
doing it
Yeah.
because I enjoy competing. And yeah, I think it came from football.
Yeah. It's interesting to me how just a lot of things that we've been doing for a while or most of our lives, it still has a part in whatever we go to next. It's
Yes,
like unknowingly we were being prepared for something different all of this time. And the
man.
structure is there, the preparation is there, and it's natural to you because you've been doing this, what you said, since you were 9.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing is, man, that's such a good point. Like it's all of those skills are transferable. Like perseverance is transferable. Uh, being able to focus and concentrate is transferable from football to anything. Um, hard work, I mean, it's transferable from athletics to anything. And I try to, yeah, I hope that my colleagues, the guys that I played with, who are in that limbo phase, like what's next? What can I do? I'm my message to them is like, or any former athlete, like it's already in you. The skills that you need to transition into whatever you want to do in life, it's already in you. It's just, are you okay with being a beginner again.
Mm.
And I think that is a hurdle. That's a hurdle for us. Like you made it to a certain level in your last endeavor. But being a beginner again, man, it is humbling. It is
Yeah,
so humbling.
man. Tell me about it, man. Something about just because like I I switched jobs at one point, and I knew systems in that old
Mm,
job well. Like I was a person you would call if you needed something, figure something out. I was the guy. Then to come to another company and don't know the systems at all. It's
mm,
like,
yeah,
man, it's like I was sort of the man to speak when it came to the other system, and now I need help with everything.
yeah. And I mean, that, like even that though, like ask that part right there, like just asking for help, like even that's something that it took me years before I could like admit that I was lost.
Yeah,
Admitting that I don't know what's next. When that in itself is the first step, like just admitting that you don't really know what's next. And I had to look inside myself to do that. Like you can pretend like you know what's going on, like
oh
I did
yeah,
for a very long time. I pretended like I had it figured out and I got it going on, but little did I know, like I mean, I wasn't fulfilled. So I mean, takes a lot of courage. It takes courage to be vulnerable, like and
yeah,
say that you don't know the answer.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's especially for us black men growing up in the
Yes.
South. You know,
Yes.
you if you don't have it all figured out, you better act like you have it figured out.
What? What? Like I mean, it's all about that image.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like it's yeah, it's tough, man.
I applaud you for just having the courage to say, man, I don't have it figured out. Like I'm getting these accolades and, I'm comfortable. I'm
Yeah.
doing well. I could pretty much, just ride this thing out, retire, and still have that wonder about what's really next. And
I
go ahead.
no, no, I'm I was just thinking when you were talking, like I think it would have been okay until I realized that money wasn't the answer. It would like I would have been it would have been cool. I would have just chilled. I would have just stayed comfortable. You know, like cuz I mean I was making good money and it's like and then you realize that like that ain't it.
Yeah.
That ain't the thing that's going to fulfill you. Like so that when I realized that I was like, "Oh man. So what is going to fulfill me?" So yeah, like when you were talking, I just remembered like there was a moment during that during I mean leading up to the Hall of Fame banquet. I was just like, I have everything that I need, and I have everything that I want, you know, and I was never really somebody who valued materials, but I could go buy something that I wanted, because I
Yeah.
just had the money to do that. But I wasn't, balling, but I had enough,
Mm.
so it was like, but it never was, it was just never enough.
Mm.
So,
Man, and you can hear this all the time, especially from a lot of people who are willing to admit, like you hear from like millionaires and people who
yeah,
have it, they're just like, yeah, I had all the money and I could do this and I could do that without worrying about it, but something was still missing.
yeah.
And it's like with the things that really matter, money can't buy that.
Oh, man. Oh, man. I mean, it's all, if it's external, it just doesn't last.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something in you that needs to be feed, that needs to be fed. There's like this garden inside of you that it it needs water, it needs sun, and if you ain't watering that garden, that inner garden, I mean, you just there's no end to it. There's no end to the amount of pleasure that you can receive from the world.
Yeah.
And it just becomes numbing at a point.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
You just had me thinking about just, how some people, they do things just for the applause and,
Hmm.
the accolades, and it could be stuff that they're not really interested in. But it's
Yeah.
just like, as long as I'm getting that, I guess it's okay. But
Right.
inside, empty.
Right. And there's a scientific reason behind it. I mean, there you get high from that. Like, you get high from I mean, I got high from the cheers. I got high
Yeah.
from 80,000 people screaming my name, and you get high from all of these, from good food, from, buying what you want, having what you want. These are all like dopamine hits for us, and it's
Yeah.
like you get used to it, but it just never satisfies for it never sustains.
Yeah.
It's not something that can sustain you, and it's just becomes boring at some point.
In the pre-show, we were talking about, you said that you were working on a new book. Um,
Yes.
Please, if you
Yes.
can, if you want to, please share, the details behind that book and how you came up with the concept.
Yes. So I was on my way to go. I was preparing to go and speak for the UCLA football team as they entered their winter workouts. So, I would be the first speaker for their winter workouts, setting the tone for the off season as they go into this fall. And it was actually the day I was flying down, the day that the fire started in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I mean, we didn't know what was happening at that moment, but as the plane got closer, to Southern California, I mean, I looked to my left outside the window, and that an entire mountain is orange, just filled with flames. So at that point, I kind of knew that I wouldn't be, I knew that I wouldn't be speaking the next morning, because
Yeah.
I was supposed to speak that next morning. So right when I got off the plane, the director of player development at UCLA called me and said, "Hey, it's shut down. We ain't doing it. I'll put you, I'll keep you for the night." And I just that night, I don't know. I knew I would be sharing my story, so I'd already prepared something, but I just kept writing about, just as if I was still going to speak. And, it actually ended up being like this chronological story with poems mixed in between of my journey from 17 years old to Oregon. So, um, 30 years old. And that's the concept of the book. I mean, it's stories from high school, poems, and then I mix some poetry in there from college, poetry, stories from college. And the name of it, I came up with the name. It's titled "Scream My Name." And that's something that just came as I was writing. I was thinking about my first collegiate football game when I started against the University of Georgia in 2010. And I mean, after,
Yeah.
that game, is the fourth quarter, like half the stadium starts screaming my name. And I'm just like, that. I knew that was the title. Right when I wrote it, I knew that was the title. And I go through this journey of self discovery throughout the book, this like sprinkled with poems in between and like meditations in between. But I end up realizing like kind of at the end of the book, well, I kind of I fell in love with that roar, that
Yeah.
scream from the
Yeah.
crowd. And it started to happen. I get to a point in the book where like this is starting to happen in poetry. Like I'm out, people are like giving
Yeah.
me claps, giving me standing ovations. I'm like, oh, here we go again. And it's like, but this time I'm a little bit more self-reflective, and I can understand who I know who I am outside of being a football player. So those screams are in perspective from this stage in my life. Or the adulation and the notoriety is kind of, I keep it in perspective, hopefully. I make mistakes, but that's the goal.
Man. Yeah. Man. Yeah. That now you got me thinking, man. I'm man. I can't wait till you get done with that because I want to get me a copy and check it out because I could just
Thank you so
imagine
much.
the storytelling that's going to be in there. That I'm thinking like, what the first thing that came to mind is say you didn't move and you decide to do poetry and get into writing, but you still did the book. It wouldn't have been the same. Like the
Mm,
content that you're going to put into this book, man, it's
yeah,
going to be fire.
I appreciate it. I really do. And, you know, to that, Terrence, there was a moment when I was back in South Carolina, and I could literally predict how my next 25 years would have looked if I stayed in South Carolina. Like, and I say that because it scared me a little bit that I could
Mm,
predict that.
yeah.
Like having, I just saw my progression if I would have stayed in the bubble of South Carolina athletics, which is, I hope people understand that, like, I'm so blessed to be a University of South Carolina Gamecock, but there was just, I saw like the ladder. I saw director player development. I saw running back coach. I saw, maybe going back into the athletic department, working in administration. I saw all of those ladders, but it did, it wasn't a picture that I wanted to see.
Mm.
I wanted to rewrite it. And, we all have that liberty to do what we want to do.
Last question before I let you get out of here. What is one thing about you that maybe a lot of people don't know that you wish more people knew, if anything?
Mm, that's a good question. One thing I wish more people knew that they don't know about me. Um, Terrence, I've been very outspoken about my uh, feelings towards white Carolinians in particular, and some of my experiences as a high-profile athlete
Yeah.
from the South, and what that's like. And I believe that some of my fans or former fans or Gamecocks in particular have this perspective um that I'm not grateful
Mm,
for their support throughout the years.
yeah.
It's not that. It's just the fact that I need to share my truth. If I don't share my truth, um I'm I'm disrespecting myself. And that truth is not always what you want to hear, what somebody else wants to hear. And I know a lot of people won't like it, and that's okay. I'm okay with everybody not liking it, but also at the same time, I just I I I, w- I want them to know that there's no love lost.
Yeah.
There's no love lost for the state. I love the state of South Carolina. I love Carolinians. It's just my truth is my truth, and I'm gonna speak it, regardless
Yeah.
um, of how people feel, and um, yeah, that in itself is what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That could be a whole episode by itself too.
Right, right.
Before I let you get out of here, let any final words, and also let the people know how they can get in contact with you for any bookings, or how they can follow you. Any information that you want to
Yes,
share.
yes. Um, I'm thankful to be on this podcast, and be able to speak speak my truth. And you can find me. I post most of my performances on Instagram at Marcus Lattimore with an underscore. And if you'd like to book me for a speaking request or a spoken word request, or just a keynote speaker, whatever the case may be, in any capacity of orating, um, you can just email me at marcuslattimore@marcuslattimore.art. And lastly, I'll say, if you are listening to this podcast and you don't have this book right here, uh, you missing out, because it is beautiful work, and it's the images, the
Oh
paint. I
man,
mean, it's
thank you.
just I'm really enjoying it. So, thank you, Terrence.
Oh man, I really appreciate that, man. I really do. When I saw you ordered a copy of my book, I was like, oh man, wow. Like, this is actually the first time that I've booked a guest and they immediately bought a copy of my book. So I
I had to.
really appreciate that, from poet to poet. I really appreciate that. It means a lot.
I had to. Thank you.
Yeah. Once again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this a part of your journey with me. Um, we probably have to do this again another time, especially after that book comes
Absolutely.
out. We're gonna have to do this
No
again.
doubt.
Yeah. But thank you so much. And everybody, make sure you check out Marcus's poetry. Um, follow him, book him, all that good stuff. And remember, as always, keep pushing forward. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and this is the place where poetry meets conversation. Hit that follow button and turn on your notifications so you won't miss an episode. Check out my blog, thebrownsugarcafe.blog. Also connect with me on Instagram at thebrownsugarcafe. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, remember, keep pushing forward.